it's reported that there have been several periods in the last few years where the Royal Navy hasn't had a single SSN at sea. As you'll know, there's a deteriorating situation in the Euro-Atlantic, coupled with the US being clear that Europe must do more in Europe. So what's the advantage of the UK committing to rotate an Astute-class SSN out of Australia? And bearing in mind that rotation is only 2 years away, is it even realistic anymore?
So firstly, it is 1 year away, because it's a 26 rotation in which we're aiming for. But secondly, I'd answer it in two parts. Firstly, I can't comment on submarine availability, although the committee will no doubt be able to see lots of that online available on this.
Just on that, we have it's publicly known there's 6, and we have 1 that's out of action, so there's 5 that's already publicly known. So there's 5. Bearing in mind the situation I've just outlined, we have 5 available.
Entirely understand. I'm not allowed to comment on submarine availability, but I entirely understand the concern you're raising. The second part is why contribute to the rotational forces in Australia. It is directly because the optimal path for delivery of AUKUS sees the Australians gaining benefit from having the ability to understand how they dock, service, maintain, operate a nuclear submarine. And the agreement that we have with our Australian American friends is that there will be rotations between a UK Astute boat and the Virginia-class American submarine operating out of Western Australia. That will build the knowledge that the Australians will need to be able to operate those boats, and in particular for a UK context, is understanding how they would operate a UK designed and operated boat, because effectively the SSN would be a similar, SSN AUKUS would be a similar boat in terms of some of the design principles and operating style that you would see with an Astute class submarine. That's why there is a strategic advantage and importance of us continuing to provide a Astute boat in rotation with our American friends to build capacity in the Australian system to deliver this. It also creates advantage in terms of the training opportunities that then we can bring back to the Euro-Atlantic area as well.
I think, thanks for that, Minister. I think the more important part of my question was, is it actually realistic? Because if there's 1 there, bearing in mind you said there's 5, so then we've got 4 left. We've got Russian subs, we've got problems in the Euro-Atlantic, the JI-UK gap. Is it realistic that we're going to be able to send one to Australia?
Yes, it is realistic.
Does it leave us vulnerable if we do that?
No, it's entirely realistic for us to do so. It's in the planning assumption for the Royal Navy that we will participate in the rotational forces. It is key to the delivery of the AUKUS programme that we do so. There is advantage for us, but we're maintaining our ability to deliver the tasks that are asked of our submarine fleet at the moment. But one of the reasons in the SDR that we set out our ambition to have up to 12 SSN AUKUSes is because we see there being an increasing role for the submarine, the Hunter-Killer class of submarines, and that's why we've set out the importance of procuring more of them, but that's obviously conditional on the improvement in output that we want to see at both Barrow but also Rainsway as well.
No, we had Simon Case before us, I think it was last week, and he wasn't overly confident about the timeline for those 12 subs.
So the Defence Review set out the ambition quite clearly, up to 12 submarines. But to deliver those 12, a number of things have to be true. So we have to improve the speed of production in Barrow. So it needs to be a new submarine emerging every 18 months. That can only happen if we get the skills situation right, and we can only get the skills situation right in Barrow if we build enough houses, if we deal with education, transport and some other challenges as well. That's what Team Barrow is designed to deliver. But also we need to maintain our current fleets. That's where a Team Plymouth approach that the government has backed also sits. It also means recognising the importance of investing in the nuclear reactor work. That's why we've signed the £9 billion Unity contract with Rolls-Royce. So we're getting ahead of some of those bits because I think broadly there is a need for more submarines. That's why we set that out clearly. But to deliver that run rate of production from Barrow, it's not just Barrow that has to see investment, it's the entire supply chain. And so that's why, although we've got a Team Barrow that looks specifically at the skills and the the obstacles to be overcome in Barrow, it needs to be part of a broader endeavour.
I'll leave it there, Chair, because I'm conscious of time.
Thank you very much, most kind of you. Let's move on to issues around SSN AUKUS and other peoples and skills issues with Jessie Norman.
Thank you, Chair. Couple of preliminary questions, if I may, Minister. When can we expect the Defence Investment Plan?
The Defence Investment Plan is being worked on currently. We're still projected to publish it shortly, and we're reaching the final stages of that work at the moment.
You're not kidding. I mean, late 2025 is the commitment, and it's the 2nd of December. So when can we see it? Are you going to run it so late that we can't have any parliamentary scrutiny before Christmas?
When the DIP is published, I would expect considerable parliamentary scrutiny on both.
You're going to get it, but I just want to be sure if it's going to be before Christmas, that's all.
Oh, no, we want it, we welcome it, because it speaks to the wider point about telling the story about defence. The Secretary of State has set out his ambition to publish it. We're working on it at pace. In fact, actually, 2 of the 3 of us, if we weren't in front of your committee, we would be in meetings about the DIP to advance it.
Glad to hear that. Another question, there was a piece in the FT about how the Army is now about to invest significantly in German and American drones. What about supporting British drones businesses, of which we have several very high quality ones ready for scaling?
A fortnight ago, Defence Ministers opened 2 drone factories in the UK, one in Plymouth with Helsing and another one in Swindon, on the back of having opened a drone factory in Swindon only a few months previously. The SDR set out very clearly that we want to see more investment in autonomy and allocated a much larger considerable budget to do so. The Defence Investment Plan sets out how we want to do that. But there will be some technologies in the Defence Investment Plan that we will be procuring with our friends and allies. That is a key part of keeping R&D costs down, sharing loads and building flow into our system and capability. The Trinity House agreement that we signed with our German friends provides a number of lighthouse projects that we are working deliberately with our German friends to progress, just as Lancaster House did with France, and the recent agreements that the intention for agreement with Norway around the frigates, for instance, provides opportunities to work with our allies. And so on a starting point, we are investing more in UK drone manufacturing, both high-end special capabilities, but also the ability to have mass as well, which is a different part of the drone and autonomy spectrum. And we've made considerable progress in terms of drones in the maritime space. And I would expect the First Sea Lord to be saying more about that in due course.
Right, but it sounds like the Germans have got a policy which is to take their 3 businesses, choose 2 of them and make one into the Mercedes-Benz and the other into the BMW of drones over time. And we don't have a policy for creating internal, resilient, serious scale capacity in drones through UK companies. Is that right?
No, I don't agree with that assessment.
So we can expect a lot of investment in UK drones businesses from the UK government and from primes supported by the government.
I mean, we're already seeing large amounts of investment in the drone autonomy sector from UK businesses and from foreign direct investment into the UK. There's a number of locations where we're seeing a real investment focused on. I would say as a Plymouth MP for marine autonomy around Plymouth, there's lots of that, but we're also seeing investment in air autonomy around certain locations that have real expertise in terms of doing that. But it's at the moment we have a system where we've got both UK and international firms looking to set up and have already set up in the UK. That's a good marketplace to see the expansion of drone technology that we want to see. And there's real opportunities in the Defence Investment Plan, given the large commitment that we have made. I think it's £4 billion to autonomy, and you'll see autonomy embedded across all our services as standard, with crewed, uncrewed and autonomous systems becoming the default across our armed forces. Now, that is our way of increasing our lethality, but also protecting our people. And so we're working with our allies in order to do that. And I would point you to the drone coalition that we co-lead with our Latvian friends to look at how we can work together with our allies, not only providing support equipment for Ukraine, which we are, but also how we're learning from that and using that in our own technologies. But the
just on a second, would it be a failure of UK policy if we didn't have 1 or 2 major global drones manufacturers in this space that were UK owned and run?
So I and the Secretary of State are big fans of having effectively defence unicorns, and the technology space, drones in particular, would be one of those areas I would look to see some of those firms grow. There are a number of firms with enormous growth potential, both in the UK and in international markets across the different domains in terms of drone technology. But I'd also want to make clear that we want to be a place where international companies seek to invest as well. And some of the conversations that we've had with our Ukrainian friends, for instance, investing in the UK. So we need to have a mixed market in terms of that. But I do want to see more British businesses grow to scale as well.
Okay, thanks. It's been suggested to us that there aren't enough engineers in Australia to service a single Virginia-class sub. What assurances have you had that there will be adequate skills and workforce capability in Australia as part of AUKUS?
I might turn to Chris for that.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not sure I'd recognise the picture that said Australia didn't have sufficient engineers to service a
Virginia-class
submarine. I mean, first and foremost, I think the Australians are massive.
I mean, you don't think that's true?
No, I don't think that's true.
Okay.
No. And more importantly, I can absolutely assure you that the Australians are investing very, very heavily in growing the engineering skill base that they do need in order to support their submarines as they take ownership of Virginia going forward. There are significant numbers of Australians being trained by the US. We've put nearly 1,000 people through our through Royal Navy training on nuclear safety. There are 5 Royal Australian Navy nuclear marine engineers currently embedded in the Royal Navy. So, okay. I mean, they are...
Right, 5 isn't going to crack many subs. But, yeah, what about security clearances for ones that they have in place or they're going? Obviously, these are very high security activities. You can't put an engineer on a sub who has not been appropriately vetted and assessed. You're not concerned about that?
No, I'm not concerned about that. We have very clear security protocols and procedures in place to ensure that people are appropriately security vetted, and we absolutely recognise equivalency between the 3 nations where it applies, and we always apply the highest bar to that as well going forward. I think the other thing is, when you've been to Stirling, you have seen the level of investment that's going in there. You've seen the blended workforce that's being put together to grow the capability and capacity in Australia to support and sustain submarines going forward. That is the whole point behind the structure of the rotational force and how we're putting it together.
Okay, thanks. Ministers have made very clear that AUKUS is a national endeavour. And it's national not just being in the sense of not just MOD, but across government, but also being across the whole of the UK in terms of the kinds of skills and talent it's going to require. What's your strategy for pulling people in from other parts of the UK alongside the workforce you're building in Barrow?
So, first and foremost, I would say that we have put in place the Nuclear National Skills Task Force, and there is a governance structure behind that, including Great British Nuclear, that is looking to grow the skills we need in the UK to support both civil and defence going forward and grow the workforce by 40,000 by the end of this decade. We are seeing no evidence at the moment that we are struggling to get graduate trainees and apprentices to apply for jobs. In fact, just about every scheme we've got is significantly oversubscribed going forward. We've opened skills academies in Derby, in Barrow, and in Plymouth, and there are satellite offices that Rolls-Royce have opened in Cardiff and Glasgow going forward. Through initiatives such as Team Barrow, Team Plymouth, and the Defence Growth Partnerships, we will be putting in place all of the enablers to enable us to ensure that we can deliver what is going to be required. I mean, at its peak, SSN AUKUS will require 21,000 people in the UK to be working on it, and we need to grow. There'll be 7,000 additional jobs created as part and parcel of that as we bring SSN AUKUS design through and into production readiness going forward. So, we are making a significant national effort, cross-government, to enable what we need to deliver this.
That's helpful. Thanks. Final question for Air Marshal Jones. I thought you said earlier that the programme was making real progress on submersibles, underwater technologies in relation to Pillar 2. Have any projects actually been acquired? Have any platforms been built? Have any products been created in terms that one could recognise as a completed task?
There are a couple of areas probably that are worth mentioning. There's been this year the launch and recovery of underwater uncrewed vehicles from our Astute-class submarine. We did that in the Mediterranean over the summer. That was the first time that's been done. And that was both launching and recovering that autonomous system, which allows us to investigate capabilities that are to do with underwater sensing capabilities. The other area that we've done this year on one of the AUKUS Pillar 2 operational experimentation events called Exercise Talisman Sabre is that we remotely controlled a large, extra-large experimental uncrewed vehicle called XV Excalibur, which is the Royal Navy's built capability underwater, and an Australian equivalent. Both of those vessels, one was in Western Australian waters, one was in European waters, were controlled remotely from a laptop in Australia to demonstrate how that technology works. So those are real things. And when I was speaking to the team recently about it, they said of AUKUS Pillar 2, they said we just wouldn't be where we are on those technologies were it not for the cooperation that's been possible under AUKUS Pillar 2. So there are areas I would say, to take you up on the spirit of your question though, we are not scaling these things yet. And I think that is a fair point to make of AUKUS Pillar 2 particularly. There's some great novel capabilities. There's been some really good early progress, but I think the thing that we all feel about AUKUS Pillar 2 is that what we need to be thinking about now is how we turn that into really tangible capability progress and scaling that up.
Thank you. Is it a concern to you that the product could be developed and DoD will never buy a non-American product?
Well, I think the thing about AUKUS Pillar 2 is it is not about us buying and selling each other's technology. It's about co-creation. And so I think that's where AUKUS Pillar 2 has really succeeded in terms of it's the technological collaboration at the developmental stage, so that each country feels a sense of ownership about what is then produced.
And therefore there isn't, as it were, the not made here issue that you sometimes find with the Pentagon.
Precisely. I think it is that collaborative approach from the outset that is in the spirit of AUKUS Pillar 2. And it doesn't need to be platforms, of course. You know, we could be talking about, as we say, electronic payloads or the wiggly amps that go inside. So there's all sorts of ways of co-creating and collaborating in a way that still gives room, I think, for the different partners to make their own things but collaborate where possible.
That's helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I believe Fred Thomas wanted to come in with a quick supplementary on this issue as well.
Thanks, Jay. Just to point out, you've just brought up as an example of AUKUS Pillar 2 success, us exercising off the coast of Australia with a particular capability, of a large underwater capability, and the Australians exercising at the same time with the same capability, but in fact not the same because it's different, made by someone else, because we couldn't get it together to get the same product and have the same capability. So they're two different platforms made by two different companies, and to say that it's a Pillar 2 success just because they're just about able to talk to each other or both go back to a separate option is stretching the definition of success, when you said there as well in the same answer that Pillar 2 should be collaborative co-development. I mean, those things were not developed together. They're very separate items. And some of us on this committee were extremely disappointed when we went to Australia to find that only 2 weeks before we got there, they signed an arrangement with an American company at massive figures to procure something that we procured, and I think you described it there 6 months ago. That works. So when you've highlighted a success, aren't you really highlighting a problem there?
I think what I'm highlighting is that collaboration comes in many forms. I don't think the aim of AUKUS Pillar 2 is that we all stand in front of the same platform, painted the same colour and doing the same job. It's that there are many ways to collaborate technologically, and in fact, where the most advanced technological collaboration happens is often behind the scenes and under the bonnet. And I think, to see technology through the realms of bits of metal and platforms is very much how we used to look at technology, and it's not how we look at capability now. The collaboration that I'm talking about is absolutely cutting edge, and the things that it then enables us to do together as a force multiplier, and the capability that delivers is absolutely an operational success.
I buy what you've just said, but I think it's worth noting that from where the conversation on Pillar 2 was a year and a half or 2 years ago, we're now in a space where we're talking about basically stuff being able to use a similar software and talk to each other, and that being the kind of output for Pillar 2, which is just worth noting.
I would just challenge that just ever so slightly. We're working with our American friends and Australian friends on a whole range of technologies that we're doing at the moment. We're looking at whether we can develop signature capabilities alongside them. That's subject to outcomes from the US review and agreement between those three nations. But I think what the Air Marshal was suggesting is that we're already seeing some technologies, some products from that collaboration coming online. And so I wouldn't want to leave the committee with the impression that it's only a little bit of tech, a little bit of code that has come out of Pillar 2 so far. There are successes that we have seen, but they won't necessarily be scaled at the moment. And I think one of the opportunities we have with Pillar 2 is to take those technologies, either develop as single platforms, shared platforms if appropriate, but actually many of those pieces of tech inform and work with other bits of tech that we have to create new platforms. And so I think, unlike in Pillar 1 where it's very clear you're building a submarine, in Pillar 2 it is a whole range of technologies and platforms and ways of operating using those technologies that could potentially be the result of it. It makes it harder.
We think we're saying the same thing, Minister.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much. Right, let's move on to industrial capacity and investment issues with Michelle Scroggum.
Thank you, Chair. So Stephen Lovegrove told us not too long ago that past investment into Pillar 1 didn't happen quick enough, and that it described an ongoing requirement to make sure that funding coming into Barrow happened quickly, and that was the biggest risk to AUKUS Pillar 1. What was the root cause of the delays in the past with the funding, and what will you be doing to make sure that that doesn't happen again?
I start with that and perhaps ask Chris to fill on where we are on funding. The stop-start nature of submarine builds that we've seen in Britain over the last few decades severely damaged not just our skills base, the machinery used to build the bits that go into a submarine, but an atrophy of the supply chain. And that stop-start, which I know you're very familiar with, significantly affects the capital requirement to get us back up to running order. And one of the advantages of where we are with AUKUS that perhaps we might not have been with previous classes, Astute as an example, is that you're seeing Astute to AUKUS SSNA transfer. So the skills are transferable, the supply chain, the production facilities haven't been demobilised to then be remobilised. And so a lack of long-term drumbeat is a significant problem that we are seeking to overcome. That's not unique to submarines. There's a number of areas that we've inherited a lack of a drumbeat, where we've seen a higher cost to acquiring a platform or resupplying or restocking because there wasn't a drumbeat of orders. It's one of the reasons why that philosophy is present in our munitions factories, seeking to create always-on munition factories, so we're stopping the peaks and troughs. When it comes to Barrow, as a government, we're quite proud of the investment that is going into Barrow. The 1,000 extra jobs in the shipyard under this government is a significant investment. The change in how the town centre feels in terms of some of the investment there. But we know there's a lot more to do. And I think that long-term commitment that we've made in terms of the 200 million and its division, 20 million a year-ish, makes a significant difference in terms of the confidence that people can also have to invest. Because I don't doubt that the totality of funds required to deliver SSN AUKUS in Barrow and the uptick in production speeds means we have to crowd in more funding, both from defence, other parts of government, but also the private sector as well. But there is now a very clear demand signal and a very clear seed funding provided by government to do that. But I'm under no illusion that there is a lot more to do in Barrow, just as there is in Plymouth, just there is on the Clyde in the operating base to make sure that we can successfully operate our nuclear submarines. So we're dealing with a legacy and a deficit of investment going back many years, and that makes investing again more expensive because we haven't seen that drumbeat of investment in skills and the supply chain. But Chris, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, no, thanks, Minister. I mean, I think first and foremost is we're absolutely committed to getting to the capacity we need to meet that 18-month drumbeat requirement going forward. There's £6 billion going into the submarine industrial base in order to facilitate that. I mean, if you go to Rainsway, you'll see all of the ground being broken. You'll see the primary components operations factory going up. You'll see the benefit of £2.4 billion worth of Australian investment going into Rainsway and into Sheffield Forgemasters. We're working very, very closely with British Aerospace, BAE rather, to optimise the laydown of Barrow going forward to ensure that we can absolutely streamline and set up for success and put in place the 2 streams of submarine building that's going to be required in order to enable us to meet that 18-month drumbeat requirement, which requires us to effectively double the capacity in Barrow over the next 5 years. That includes outsourcing activity into the wider industrial base and making the necessary investments in the supply chain to enable all of that going forward. And there's a significant programme of work, physical activity going on in Barrow, as you well know, as well as the work we're doing on design to ensure that we can get after what is required to enable all of that going forward. You'll see that in practical steps like, again, as is now part of the public record, the purchase by BAES of the old GSK site at Ulverston going forward. So there's lots and lots of activity going on to ensure that we can get after it. We're absolutely committed to driving after ensuring that we are in the position we need to be once we can get through the design phase and ready for production readiness, that we can then start the submarine to continue to drive for having a submarine operational by the late 2030s.
I would say all of those things. I have absolutely no doubt that we will be able to deliver the infrastructure needed to build those submarines. What we don't yet see is any physical sign on the ground. So if you talk to people in Barrow and Furness, they've heard all of this before. They've been let down for decades. So the people that actually live there, all they've seen so far is words. They haven't seen anything where there's been a spade in the ground or any transformation. So for them, this is incredibly frustrating because they don't get to listen to what I listen to when I'm down here, that all of the talk is about Barrow and Furness, that it's going to be a blueprint for other towns across the country. They see no change in their daily lives for the majority of people in there. We've talked about the speed at which we have to do things, and we've had 12 months almost of Team Barrow. But there's a huge amount of work being undertaken, and still the people in Barrow don't see any of the changes. We talk about buying the GSK site. They still don't see in Ulverston or in the Barrow area what is going to happen at that GSK site. We just see announcements being made. So how can we show the people living in that area that these changes are actually happening? What is going to be delivered rather than just promised? That's my challenge to people, is the speed with which things happen, because politics is incredibly slow. It's infuriatingly slow when you're trying to make a change, and we're 15 months in to this government and people in my patch are yet to see the physical changes to their lives. So are you confident that the speed we're going at is going to deliver those submarines on time?
So I'm not going to lie and say that there is not a significant level of challenge ahead of us, and that we've got a very steep hill to climb in order to make sure that we get to create the overall ecosystem and the infrastructure we need and the skilled workforce that will sit behind it to enable us to deliver SSN AUKUS on time. We have a long way to go, and it's not without risk, and there is a significant amount of impetus that we need to do that. What I can absolutely say is I'm absolutely committed to work alongside BAE and Barrow in order to achieve that. We've spoken earlier about the need to communicate more clearly, and clearly that is coming across, but I would hope that the investment we've made, for example, in the Submarine Skills Academy, the work that you're seeing on Ramsden Dock, the new buildings that are going up in the yard, the growth of the workforce between 2023 and 2027 by over 5,000 people. These are all positive messages we can be putting into the local community, both about the opportunities that are there and how it will support UK growth and, more importantly, the local economy. And I think the activity that we're delivering through Team Barrow, including the investment in the town centre, should all start, I hope, to pay dividends in due course, if it's not already doing so today.
And I would say that is a big part of it, that we're putting funding in, but so far all they've seen in Barrow is that we've stopped a project, and that's what people see. So there was a smaller project going to happen to the market that was very run down and looking a bit dilapidated. And with Team Barrow coming in, we've said we can do something much more dynamic and impressive with the town centre. So they stopped that project happening. And all they've seen is something taken away at this point. We need to go at pace to make things happen quickly so that people can actually see some changes.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think people do need to see the change. But let me reassure you that this government support for Barrow is total. The Secretary of State, the Prime Minister, have been clear in their support for Barrow. The royal status afforded to Barrow is a significant sign of the importance of Barrow and the commitment that we've made, not just to the new Dreadnought class submarines being built in Barrow, but to build SSN Orcus in Barrow as well, is something that Barrow hasn't had for quite some time, which is the certainty of what is ahead. So we've got the policy certainty for Barrow. We've got the commitment in terms of funds that we will be investing and spending there. We've got the commitment in terms of the increase in workforce, which we're already seeing, more people working in the shipyards than has been there for a very long time. But I agree with you, it has to be real, it has to be tangible, and that is a challenge not just in Barrow, but in Plymouth, on the Clyde, and other places connected with AUKUS as well.